Hi. Hello, everybody. It's another Thursday, and welcome to All Things Rex Worldwide. I am so thrilled today to have actor, writer, producer, musician Ryan Carnes on the show. And you'll know him from many of his roles from Desperate Housewives, Clint Eastwood's Letters from Iwo Jima, Cupid, the movie Cupid for Christmas, and as Laszlo on Doctor Who, Dr. Lucas on General Hospital, and SYFY's limited series The Phantom, plus others. And he'll next star in a desert road trip thriller Darlings, followed by a post-apocalyptic martial arts thriller Resilience, or The Resilience, and a upcoming comedy, a romance comedy, I believe, called Powder Puff. So if you'll help me, welcome Mr. Ryan Carnes. And there you are. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me today.
I'm happy to have you here too, and I'm so thrilled that you are. I know you as a good guy, and I'm so pleased that you made time today to be here. And you do so many different things. You act, you write, you're a musician, you drum. You're a producer. You've got a lot of different irons in the fire. So I ask you, sir, um, where should we begin with you? How did you get started in the entertainment business?
That's a good place to start. Everybody loves a good origin story, right?
That's right.
So interestingly, so music is my first love, actually. When I was, I think about 3 years old, as the story goes, from my parents, I started pulling out pots and pans from the cabinets and wooden spoons and banging on them. And fortunately, they had the foresight to go, maybe he wants to drum. Maybe that's going to be his thing. So they bought me a little toy drum set that the neighbor boys promptly destroyed. And I was none too pleased about that. But it did open a door for me to say to my parents, hey, I'd really like to have a real drum set. And they said, okay, well, if you start taking lessons, if you commit to lessons for a year, then we'll get you, kind of like an entry-level drum set. And I think it was a good deal. They incentivized me, and I kept mine to the bargain, as did they. And so I got my first drum kit. But music was, even though it was my first love and it was the first thing that I ever really wanted, people ask, what did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to be a musician, like John Bon Jovi. And it was interesting though, because I was a really physically active kid as well. And where I'm from, I'm from a small community in Illinois, and the culture there really supports sports. And it does, or at least at the time, it wasn't necessarily a culture that I don't want to say that it didn't support the arts, but it just wasn't as popular as sports. And because I was a really active kid and I was good at sports, kind of fell into that. And I was really focused on sports. And ultimately, had it not been for a back injury when I was 17, I probably would have gone to college on a baseball scholarship at maybe a D2 or D3 school, and would have gone to law school and probably would be an attorney right now. But fate intervened. I broke my back. That cost me my junior and senior year of both basketball and baseball. So I really switched my focus, and I decided, well, I'm just going to go to college for academics and focus on that, go to law school, become an attorney. I really wanted to set myself up on that trajectory. And so I ended up going to Duke University, and I was behind on some arts credits, or I guess arts credits. So I ended up in an intro to performance acting class, and it just kind of blew my world open, in the sense that I was a very focused athlete and student, and I had been for a very long time. And being in this acting class, this performance class, where everything was just about play and exploration and creativity, was really enriching for me at the time. And it was I think a much needed deviation from the focused sort of type A plan that I had been on for myself. So from there, I took a couple of more theater classes, and I ended up saying, hey, I think I'm going to declare a theater minor along with my public policy major. And then I did a play, which I didn't want to do, but a couple of my classmates kept on trying to get me to do it for weeks on end. And I finally said, okay, fine. All right, I'll learn a stupid monologue and I'll audition for your stupid play. And I auditioned, I got cast, fell in love. And at the end of that semester, I took a year leave of absence because that's sort of the procedure there. And moved to LA, got a manager, got an agent. And fortunately for me, things went fairly quickly. And I think within the first 10 months of living in LA, I was on set on my first film. And then a year to the day that I had gone to LA, I was on set of a SAG commercial, getting my SAG card on that commercial. And so, I was feeling good and happy and loving what I was doing. So I sent a note to the university and I said, I'm just going to go ahead and withdraw. And, if at some point I get tired of this, I can always go back to school.
Wow. Well, that's quite a trajectory. First off, you had somebody who cared enough about you to get you a drum set. I mean, most parents don't want their kids making lots of noise, especially banging on drums. And you had somebody who got you a drum set. But yeah, wow. I mean, what a trajectory. Through injury came something else. I can't tell you how many people, I mean, I taught acting in Los Angeles and elsewhere, but the thing is that how many people go, I didn't want anything to do with theater. I don't want anything to do with a play. And then they do one and they're like, I've got to do this. This is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
They get bit. What do you think that is, Ryan? And by the way, before you answer it, let me say that those of you who are watching live, please leave comments. You can ask Ryan questions if we can. We'll in the chat or wherever you're watching, and we'll put them up if we can, and Ryan will answer them if we can, or if he can. And like the show, and please do share it out. And immediately when the show is done broadcasting, the very link you're watching live becomes a replay link, so you can share it with your friends. And if you're watching the replay, go ahead and leave comments, like the show, and share it out. Well, Ryan, what do you think it is? What was it about doing that play that what woke up inside you that you said, I got to do this. I'm going to withdraw from school.
That's a great question, and I've thought about that some over the years. I think I should say one caveat is that it wasn't my first play. When I was 10, so I'm fortunate in that even though my parents didn't ultimately choose creative lanes for their careers, they both have a little bit of the creative and performance bug. They both did musicals in high school together. My dad even played in band. My dad did, I think, some stuff in college in theater. And so they really wanted me to have a well-rounded experience as a child. And I remember growing up, my dad would always want to take me, and my parents would always want to take me to musicals at the Muni in St. Louis, Missouri. And I kicked and screamed. I did not want to go to those musicals. It was like, oh my God, I just want to be at home and like play in the woods or play basketball or whatever. I don't want to go to this stupid thing. So when I was 10, I don't know how they talked me into this. I really don't. But when I was 10 years old, there was at our local theater guild, they were doing the best Christmas pageant ever. And somehow somebody talked me into I guess, auditioning and doing this play. And I was one of the Herdman children. And I loved it. I don't remember a lot about it because it was so long ago, but I do remember that I had a really good time doing it. But then it was like, okay, boom, back to sports. Enough of that. Back to sports, back to band. And so I think it was just a part of me that had gone, I don't know, unrecognized, unacknowledged, unexplored. And so, and also too, the fact that I had been such a focused, dedicated student and athlete for so long, I think, at a certain point, I forgot how to play. I think at a certain point, I forgot how to be a kid, really, in a way, and have this creative, curious spirit that acting and that the arts encourages. And so once I did that play, I think it really tapped into that part of me that just hadn't been given space to really explore in that way, and frankly, just to play,
Wow.
just to play, you know.
Well, I love that because you know, my parents, my dad played flute and piccolo. I mean, who plays the piccolo, right? My mom played piano and sang, and they gave me piano lessons, and I hated every single second of it. I just didn't want to play the piano, partly because of who was teaching me at the time, you know. And then later, I wanted to play the piano, but I never got good at it. You know, I didn't put the time or effort or energy into getting at it. I got dancing lessons and acrobatics, and I would have been an acrobat, but I at around 13 was injured. I tore all the tendons and ligaments out of my knees and ankles, and so that ended that. But I always wanted to be an actor. They put me in acting class when not expecting I would want to act, but they put me in acting class when I was about 4. And, you know, so we played trees and bears and animals, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I loved it. But when I went into acting as an actor, I did it because I felt hollow inside. I think I needed the recognition. And Gary Puckett was on the show last week, and I don't know if we said it on the air or off the air, but you know, I pretty much think, you know, actors don't get the women, you know, musicians get the women, and I should have been a musician, but I sucked at it. So, you know what I mean? In LA, everybody's like, oh, you're an actor? Oh, really? You know, so what else is new? You know, I mean, everybody in LA is an actor. What I think is marvelous also, and what people don't understand, is how difficult it is to get a Screen Actors Guild card, especially today. When I got it, it cost $300. It was like in the 70s, and then you know, I mean, I think it's gotten harder to get now. I mean, I don't know, but it's now like 3 grand or something like that, and you have to do a certain amount of things. And but most people, you know, can spend years trying to get a Screen Actors Guild card. So to say, you know, within a year or so, you were in a commercial and getting your SAG card is pretty darn impressive.
I do think that it's changed even since I first joined the union, and I don't actually know. You know, fortunately, it's been a while since I've musicians get the women. Um, Fortunately, it's been a while since I've had to really look into that and be concerned
Right.
about it. But I do, when I got my card, it was you had 2 options basically, as I remember it. You could either be Taft-Hartley, which was the law or whatever suggesting
It's a federal law or national
yeah,
law.
production has to prove you're the only person for the job, and then they have to be willing to pay the penalty because there is a penalty fee
That's how I got mine. Yeah.
Yeah, or at the time, you could also do background work until you got 3 vouchers as a featured background actor, and then you could automatically be admitted to the union at that point. I don't know what it's like now, but I think it's probably harder, because I think in the time that I've been doing it, I doubt that there have become less people who want to get in the union. I would imagine.
Was after part of the union when you joined, or was it they hadn't merged yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a different union. Just like when I joined, there was no Screen Extras Guild part of the union. It was just the SAG, and then the Screen Extras was different, and after was another union as Equity or AGBA was. So I mean, very different thing. But what the point I'm making is, even if you get in within a year, there's a certain amount of effort and there's a certain amount of, I think, mindset that you really have to have, because Hollywood, I mean, for most people who show up in Hollywood, they're like, yeah, who else is here? I mean, it's kind of a factory town. It doesn't really go, wow, where have you been, Oliver? Because they have everybody coming in so often every day to pursue, modeling, acting, music, writing, whatever it might be, that when anybody makes it and breaks through and works at all, it's almost like, wow, really? At least that's how I have found it over the years. What say you? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, look, it's difficult to compare, my industry with another industry because I've never been in another industry. I'm sure every industry has its own competition in its own unique ways. I do know that it's, you know, it's incredibly competitive. You know, I can say that about this industry, and it's a very you know, it's a very, it has a short attention span is what I'm trying to say. So
Good way to put it.
you know, like, and I've realized this even more over the years. You know, so much of it has to do with, like, okay, what did you do lately? What are you doing now? What are you, and you know, like someone's talent or ability or whatever, fill in the blank, may not have shifted one bit, but if they don't have a thing, right? If they don't have a thing that they're working on, or a thing that they just did, or a thing coming up, like, the town easily forgets.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just it's the nature of the beast, and it's a constant thing to just remember and to stay on top of. And you know, I had a friend tell me one time, who this information came to me secondhand. There is an Academy Award winning producer that my friend is friends with, and he said, you know, this producer said to me, he said, just remember to never ever pedestalize people in the industry. Don't do it, because everybody is in the same. As soon as somebody finishes a job, the playing field is equal. Everybody, it doesn't matter. You could be number one on IMDb Pro, the most famous actor in the world. As soon as one job is done, you're looking. Now, the exception is, you know, some people, you know, they're booked 2 or 3 years out. But at some point, no matter how successful, no matter how famous someone is, they're going to be going, shoot, I don't know what's next. So it's just the nature of the industry as you know, gig worker, as a gig worker industry.
Well, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head right there. It is a gig worker. In the old days, the studio system took care of the actors, put them under contract. You could lose your contract, or your option might not be renewed, but at least while you're under contract, you knew that they were going to put you to work, or you're going to get paid because they had invested in you.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like everybody's an independent contractor. It's a gig. It's like, you know, and so it surprised me to discover that some big people go, I'm out of work like everybody else,
Right.
you know, and if they're not knocking on my door, and you know, I have some name value, you know, I mean, imagine how tough it is for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, but and I'm glad that we've gone this way, because what I wanted to do is, you know, I know you as a good guy, as a thoughtful person, somebody who, you know, invests in yourself and cares about yourself and what you're doing, and being in Hollywood is a challenge for many people. And so a lot of people who like would come out today, if they want to do it, I'm all for them doing it. But you know, I think they should know what they're going to face. But the reason why, you know, I ask this is because, do you do anything? Do you have any kind of practice or mindset or ritual or anything that keeps you going and keeps you inspired? I mean, that when the going gets tough, because you're very creative, you've got a lot of irons in the fire. You do a lot of different things.
Yeah, you know, one of the things for me, one of the secrets that I tapped into at some point, and it's you know, it's not much of a secret. It's pretty practical. There's no hocus pocus. Is that, you know, I tend to be very ambitious, and I've also in the past tended to think that it was kind of like, and this relates to, I suppose, a spiritual connection. It's like, it's hard for me to have faith that anything was up to anyone else or anything else other than myself. And it was like, if I'm not doing it, if I'm not like wrestling this thing to the ground, then it's not getting done. It's not being done. And that didn't account for, you know, God, the universe. It didn't account for outside forces, which I now have, I now have a belief in and a faith in. Additionally, I found that at a certain point, it was really difficult for me when I was only acting. It was really difficult for me to, like, only acting, you know, professionally. It was very difficult when, you know, I would be pinned for a job and it wouldn't go my way, or I would do a pilot and it wouldn't get picked up to go to series, or I would be the second choice for something, or I would be attached to act in something that then the financing fell out and it didn't get made, or fill in the blank. All of the things that happen in this industry that are completely out of an actor's control. I mean, really out of most people's control, especially out of an actor's control. And I think at a certain point, frankly, I'm going to tell you something. Going back to something that you said earlier about the reason that you initially got into acting, upon much self-reflection over the years, I realized that I got into acting. It was fun. I mean, what I said is true. And I also, upon reflection, I think there was something in me that hadn't felt seen when I was growing up, hadn't felt acknowledged, hadn't felt, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone in particular. That was just, that was part of my lesson, part of my journey. And I think one of the big reasons that acting, and here's another thing. I didn't like who I was. So stepping into another character's shoes was like, oh my God, thank God, what relief. I don't have to deal with myself now. I don't have to worry about how much I like or don't like myself. Like, I'm focused on this. And so it was very appealing for me to just lose myself into something else. At around 2012, I almost left the industry. I almost just said, you know what? There have been too many heartbreaks, too many close calls, too many rolls of the dice that didn't go my way. I might pack my bags. And I did a lot of soul searching, and I asked myself a lot of questions during that period of time. And if I did want to continue on, why did I want to continue on? Well, what was my why? And if it was superficial and if it wasn't good enough, I was going to leave. I was going to go do something else. But ultimately, I realized I love telling story. Ultimately, I'm a storyteller. Whether I'm a musician, an actor, a writer, I'm a storyteller. And that inspires me and that motivates me. And I have a strong desire to tell stories that matter, that are impactful, that allow people to think in a new way, or challenge people to open their hearts further, or challenge people to change their minds about something. And I started looking at other actors in the industry, like Joel Edgerton, for example, who has a production company, he directs. And I went, you know what? That sounds pretty good. That appeals to me, because I think it allows an actor to have greater agency, or at least the illusion of having greater agency. I mean, there's still a lot of things that are beyond one's control, but it was exciting to me. And so I thought, you know what? I'm gonna stick around, but I'm gonna do it from a different point of view, a different angle, and see how that goes. And so I got into a screenwriting class, and I began that journey. And I launched this desire of I'm gonna be a producer someday. I don't even know what that means, but I bet if I create that intention, people will start showing up to help me learn what that means, to maybe mentor me. And all of that to say that I'm a much better, more mentally healthy person with multiple things to focus on, multiple creative endeavors and outlets. So I don't hyper focus on one thing and become obsessive about it and let it wreck my, I didn't get the job, my day's ruined, my week's ruined, my month's ruined. Now when things happen, and I had yesterday, I got some news that I didn't like. But you know what? Today I'm back on the horse, and I'm focused on other things. It's like, okay, that's in the rearview mirror now. Next, moving on. And so that's been my salvation. Honestly, it's been very, very healthy for me.
No, I think that's very beautiful, and I also think it's very necessary, and I think it's applicable to anybody in any industry or any endeavor in their life. The ability to handle difficult news or heartbreak over something that you really want, and the ability also to stay productive and busy and create however you want to create, instead of, when I was a young actor, all I wanted to do was act, and when nobody would hire me, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I had no, and in the 70s, when we were young, it wasn't like you could just go out with your phone and make something, because you had to buy film stock. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I have all sorts of excuses then that I look back now and go, well, that was just, a silly excuse. You could have been doing plays, but at the time, Hollywood didn't give a crap about plays. They were like, oh, if you're a stage actor, you're a film actor, go to stages, go to New York. If you want to be a film actor, you better be here. And if you weren't working, you weren't working.
Mhm.
So, what did we do? We sat in coffee shops, smoked a lot of cigarettes, and talked about how much the industry sucked. And that's not helpful. It's just not productive. It doesn't make anyone a better actor or help. Although we did workshop a heck of a lot because there, you had to do something. But to be creative, to say, I also now think very much so that maybe acting is the portal. It's the doorway for greater expression. I didn't. I mean, I ended up producing a little bit out of necessity and everything. I love it. I love it. I mean, I never thought I would, but I do. But when I was a young actor, I thought, oh, who wants to do that crap? I just want to be in front of the camera.
Mhm.
So you know what I'm saying? It's an evolution, I think, that comes about from us when we put ourselves out there as actors or as entertainers or musicians. I mean, whatever it might be, or it could be banker or lawyer, athlete, whatever it is. But when you put yourself out there, you have to have in place the kind of attitude and understanding. I think that you've cultivated in your own personal development. Because I know so many people who've let heartbreak, when you said I almost left the business, let them leave the business. I'm in the Midwest raising my children, and I go back and forth. I live in LA and I live in the Midwest, and I would go back and forth while I was raising my kids. And I would see people on auditions, and I was like, well, if I were here every week, I'd be doing the same thing, but I'm not. I'm only here like every other month or every couple of months. So, but some of the same people are still doing it. They're still doing it. They've been doing it for 40, 50 years, and, and you go, why? They go, because it's what I know and it's what I love. It's what I'm meant to do. So I think, you know, I don't know what I think at this moment, but other than to say, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and to encourage people, if you have questions. We've had some comments. I think we had a question that flashed up kind of quick in that, but at any rate, ask questions, leave comments, and thank you for being here, both live and in the replay. So what I just said. Do you think? I mean, what do you? How do you? There's so many people that we cross paths with, in Hollywood, and some are very successful at navigating the dry times, and some are not very successful navigating the dry times, and anything is possible. So, if you had to give tips or suggestions beyond what you've already said, what might you say to people who are watching right now in terms of encouragement?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good term, dry times. I like that. I don't think I've heard that or used that before. It, look, I would venture to say, because in the time that I've been doing it, I've seen a lot of people come and go. Excuse me, out of the industry. There are people, there are guys that I sat in waiting rooms with, over the year, but back when that was a thing. And I sat in callback waiting rooms with, and I tested against for pilots, and some of those guys aren't in the business anymore. And now, I don't know why. I would imagine that there's probably some of, well, I just wasn't interested anymore, or I have a family now, and that's the number one priority. But I would also imagine that some of them had difficulty navigating the dry times. And I think that that's a really important point to make, is that, it's very easy to be very unhealthy during those times, mentally, emotionally, physically. So as far as tips, I would say, and this probably especially for younger people, if there are any younger people out there listening, develop a life, create a life. And that's not to say don't give 100% dedication and commitment to the craft of fill in the blank. But when it comes to being an actor, I mean, if I have a one-dimensional life, I'm not going to be a very good actor. If I haven't had a variety of experiences, I'm not going to be very good at my job, because in a way, relaying experience. It's borrowing from my own experience, mapping that on top of the writing and the character that's in front of me, and then sharing from a very truthful, honest place. And one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got from the first manager that I had in LA was like live, have experiences, do things that scare you, step outside of your comfort zone, be daring, because all of that adds to what you're going to offer as an artist or as a performer. So like have a life, like have other interests, learn about things, educate yourself about other things, because one of the things I think one of the things that's attractive to people who are hiring actors is I know one of the things that's attractive to people who are hiring actors is that the actor's not desperate. They smell it a mile away. And if you don't have anything else to say for yourself, if you don't have anything else to offer as a human, it's not attractive to people who are hiring. And frankly, it's maybe not even attractive to the audience, because the audience wants to see someone's lived experience. And I look back, and there's one job in particular that I got, where I had a meeting with the director and the other actress, and it was like a chemistry read kind of thing, but it was also kind of an interview kind of thing. And I remember he asked me something about where we were shooting, and because I developed, I was working in this other arena at the time as well, and I had developed this other thing that I was working on, that I was focused on, and I shared that with him, and it directly pertained to where we were shooting. And I saw, when I shared that information with him, I sort of saw him go, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then he was, oh, tell me more about that. Because all of a sudden he saw me not just as an actor, but as a human. And so I think that's really, really important. And the last thing that I'm going to say, yeah, I like that. Create a life, have a life, live. The last thing that I'm going to say is, and I don't mean to sound cynical, but another great piece of advice that I got over the years was, if there's anything else in the world that you want to do, you already know what I'm going to say probably, other than be an actor, go do that. Because it's hard. Most of it is not glamorous. Most of it is it can be very lonely. It's cost me relationships in my past. Flat out, it's cost me relationships because of my schedule, or where I had to go and when I had to go. And and it's extremely competitive, as you mentioned earlier, and it's crazy making at times. It's completely crazy making. So you have to be really, really dedicated. Like if you don't really want to do it, don't do it. Don't bother.
Well said. Well said. It reminded me of. I think it's so beautiful. You should have a life. And the other thing I think that you said that I really liked, is if you do have a life and you're interested in other things, directors and producers and casting agents do too. And if you can find things that you have in common to talk about besides just acting and filmmaking, you suddenly become humans, as opposed to job giver, job taker, that auditioner, that kind of thing. I think it does wonders for being able to extend friendships and connections.
Yeah. I mean, some of the most fruitful meetings I've had over the years have been meetings where we barely even talked about business. It was just we talked about other things the whole time. We talked, oh wow, you're into that too. Oh, you've been there, and whether it was fruitful in business terms, or whether it was fruitful in that it just developed into a friendship, who cares? It's still it's fruitful, it's positive.
One of the things that I do, I mean, I find acting to be very lonely, in which you said, I remember being madly, madly, madly in love with a woman, and she with me, and we were like, I love you forever, we'll get married and all this, unless I get a soap opera and have to move to New York. Then, because our careers come first. It was always this, our careers come first, and I look back on those days, and it can cost you. So your advice of, if there's anything else you want to do, go do that. And if there's not, if you're, meant for this, you'll do this. So.
And that's something that I used to reject when people would say, I remember one producer in particular that I worked with. And if she ends up listening to this, she'll know who she is. She would always say, you can't have it all. And I hated when she would say that. I rejected that so vehemently. But with a little bit more experience and a few more grays in my beard, I've realized that there's such a great kernel of truth in that. And I would like to say it differently. It's not that I don't believe you can't have it all. It's that there's a cost to everything. Everything comes with a cost. Everything comes with there's a cost. You can perform a cost benefit analysis of everything. If you're going to have one thing, you're going to give up something else, and it becomes about priority. And like you were saying, Rex, it can be difficult on relationships. It can put a strain on relationships because if two people's number one priority is their career, well, you're potentially giving up that relationship. That's the potential cost. And so I think that's, from a practical standpoint, it's good to remember. It's good to bear in mind that every choice that we make is really an investment into what we want and to what we're prioritizing. And we have to understand that in that we're also not prioritizing something else.
Wow, that is so beautiful. That really is profound and powerful. And it's opened a doorway for me to ask you something else. The Secret came out and people went, I'll just sit in my room and I'll wish and I'll manifest and I'll have these things, but Emerson wrote an essay called The Law of Compensation, and Napoleon Hill and other thought leaders have written about this forever, that there is an investment that you make, but if you invest, you can expect to be compensated, but you have to make the investment first, number one, and two, understand that there's a cost. But there's also, how much do you ask for? If you ask for little, you're going to get little. If you ask for a lot, you get a lot, but there's that exchange. What you just said is so very powerful and profound. So in terms of that kind of, I'm going to manifest my career, I'm going to manifest, people don't realize they're responsible, accountable, and they need to invest. So would you care to elaborate more on that? And then I'm going to just tell you what we need to do. In a little bit, we need to take a break for the Los Angeles Tribune and let them know. But I want to give you the platform first, and then after that, I would very much like to talk to about some of the roles and the different things that you're doing in the drumming, and and get to some of the things that people know you for.
Sure.
So going back to it, because that was really powerfully said. I think people really need to understand that about cost.
So, is there a specific question that I can answer?
Yeah, let's see. Does anybody have a question that they'd like Ryan to answer?
I'm just not sure how you want me.
In the meantime, I will rephrase my question. So when people imagine having a career or in anything in life, so like some people want money, so they want money. They want to, be successful as a banker or an attorney or a baseball player or an actor or a musician or whatever it might be. Oftentimes they don't think in terms of, what do I have to do? What do I have to pay? How do I have to invest in order to make this happen? They just think, if I wish it enough, this kind of thing will happen. And what you've talked about is one, the cost that a business can take on you, like the movie business can have on relationships, because there are obligations and things that you have to do. So I think knowing in any business what's expected of you, what the upside, what the downside is, it's like having a plan and having a contingency plan. They're all extremely valuable. But when it comes to saying, I want this in my life, are you prepared to pay a cost? And I don't know that most people think of it that way. They think, I'll just go to Hollywood, and I've known and I'm sure you have too. I've known so many people say, I'll try it for a year or two, and if it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah, I love that one. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So when I
give it 5 years, right?
Yeah, when I first moved, and look, hey, if that's what you want to do, great, do that. You just have to understand that that's not necessarily how life works. It's about priority. When I first moved to Los Angeles, and when I would return home to my hometown back in Illinois, people would, it was people wanted to talk about what's it like. There were a lot of questions, understandably so, because it's a world that a lot of people weren't familiar with. But one of the most common things that people would say is, "Well, how long are you going to give it?"
Okay.
Like a couple years, or I never. And maybe this is a key, and the answer to the question you're asking. For me, that never even entered my mind. That wasn't a consideration. I never thought, well, I'm going to give it a couple years, and if it doesn't work out, then I guess I'll go back to school, or I guess I'll go do this or that. What never entered my mind, not once, because to me it wasn't about that. It was about, the reason I left college to do that is because it lit me up. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And I think I got some feedback, at least from the industry, that I was at least relatively okay at it. I started getting hired, so that was feedback. But even before that, it was like, no, I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing, and I'm not putting a time limit on it, because I would hear a lot of people in acting class, friends over the years, they had a backup plan. I never believed in backup plans. I still don't believe in backup plans. I think if circumstances in life change such that there becomes a necessity to, let's say, it's like, okay, well, now I have a family and a child or children, so now I have to prioritize wealth as a higher value on my list. Okay, then maybe that necessitates that I go do something that can generate immediate, consistent income. Fair enough. But when it comes to like a responsibility not necessitating something like that, I thought a backup plan is BS. I mean, frankly, that was always my view on it. It was like, there's a saying, and I don't know who said this. I don't know if it's Laszlo. I don't know. I mean, who knows? But there's this saying, or this idea of it's related to war, burning the bridges behind you. Like generals would burn bridges behind their troops, so there was no way out. It's like, we're doing this. We're in, and I believe in that mentality. Like if you gotta, if all of us, sometimes if we have a way out, we'll take it. So I just never gave myself a way out. I just said, I'm doing it until I don't want to do it anymore, or until, until it's like, okay, this is just really not my thing. I don't have an aptitude for this. Like if I wanted to be an NBA basketball player, at some point I'd hit the proverbial wall, and it would be like, it's not really for you, buddy. So I think, like there are practical considerations, but all other things being equal, burn the bridges behind you. Don't give yourself a plan B. Just go for it. Commit.
No, I love it. I heartily concur. There was never a time as a young person that I could imagine not acting, that I would not be part of this industry, that I would not have somewhere, be in it. And I saw it however I saw it, but to this day, I mean, that's why I'm still in it. But the amazing part, is that, yeah, I mean, I was always shocked when somebody said they were retiring. But then I understood it later, as not because I ever thought about retiring, but I understood that maybe their priorities changed and they went from wanting this to wanting that. Like, some people get married. I raised a family. I wouldn't trade my family for a show business career now, or at that time. I chose to raise my children, for that purpose, for that reason. And I think that the career, the lack of it, and the career that I had, and all this stuff was part of that preparation for raising my family. But I will tell you what I do love. I love being in front of the camera with another actor or actors and delivering lines that we've had to memorize and trying to make it look like we've never said them before, and have what all those kinds of things that can go wrong or right, all that camaraderie that comes from being in the trench together.
Mm-hmm.
And then having somebody going, cut, can you move to the left? Oops, I'm sorry, there's a boom in the mic. Oh, do it again. Okay, go again. All right, don't stop. Just keep, I love the interrupt. I love having to think on my feet and be in that moment in those trenches doing what I've been wanting to do all of my life, and being right there with all of this crap going around and all the distractions and all the, and all the waiting in the trailer and everything for those 30 seconds where you're sitting there with another person and something kind of magical happens between the two of you. It's almost like a first date where you go, I know this is the one. And sometimes you don't get those moments, but that is the, all of the crap that can go wrong, being right there in front of the camera is it's that think on your feet. It's a live moment. It's rise to the occasion, do your best, and then hope that they like it so that they go print it. Well, they don't say that anymore, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. I think there's something to be to underscore what I was communicating a minute ago. I think it's really comes down to priorities and commitment to those priorities. I've seen people try to do relationships with. I've tried to do relationships with one foot in and one foot out. It doesn't work. Sooner or later, the jig's going to be up. And I think it's like that too with a career, with a dream, any dream. And it becomes really, really important to commit fully. And also too, like, Rex, like when you're in a scene, like comedy, the best people, the funniest comedy is the most committed comedy. The people who are best at comedy are the people who are best at committing to absurd circumstances, right? Like heightened circumstances in a familiar or unfamiliar moment. It's about commitment. So if you can't, as an actor, if you can't commit to your career, how can you commit in the scene?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And you're absolutely right. Those people are all in. They're just totally all in.
Yeah.
And it is amazing to be able to watch it on screen or to watch it unfold in front of you right there on the set. But what a great point that you just made. You can't commit to your, gosh, that's powerful. Very powerful.
And look, there are always outliers, right? There are always exceptions to any rule. Right. We've all heard the stories about so and so. They didn't even want to be an actor. They didn't care. They half-assed acting class. They whatever, and then it just sort of happened. It just sort of fell into their laps. Fair enough. I don't think that that's the rule. I think those are the exceptions, and I think it's like that with anything. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and there are always exceptions, but your point, they are exceptions.
Yeah, by definition. Yeah. Right. So somebody is asking, how do I develop my acting skills? Is this something that I practice? So,
because I was going to ask you about that in a second. Fantastic. No, go for it.
What do you want me to go back to your other question first?
Sure. Let's do that.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, there's something, and I think it's one of the things that's always drawn me, or kept me drawn to acting. I've always been a very heady guy. It's very easy for me to get lost in my head, lost in my thoughts. And I think one of the things that's so glorious for me about acting is being in a scene. Like if I'm really doing my job, I can't do that. It requires the utmost presence that I can possibly offer in that moment. And I love humanity. I love people. I love connection. I love moments in life, right? Like moments with a stranger. One of my favorite things ever is to like be in a grocery store and see something funny happen, because funny things are happening all around us all the time if you're paying attention, right? Something funny, something weird, an event happens. And like maybe nobody else sees it except for me and another person, and we share a moment about it. We make eye contact, and it's sort of like, ah, wow, that was something, huh? Or oh, damn. It's like it's a moment. It's connection. It's human connection, and I love that. And I think that for me, having the opportunity to set everything else in my life aside, to silence whatever might be going on in my head, and to really, even if it's fabricated, right? Like even if we're telling a story that somebody else has written, there's lights around, there's 50 people standing on the other side. In that moment, it's still happening. There's still an exchange. It's still very real, and it's there's nothing like it. It's just it's something that really inspires and turns me on, not in the sexual sense, but just in feeling of aliveness sense.
Well, it's like bringing a focus to something, I mean, everything gets heightened, but it's also, for me, I mean, it's like suddenly everything is just alive, but it's a focused aliveness. It's not scattered. It's just,
I was having a conversation with a former professional ballerina recently, who's now teaches and leads I forget what the term is, but like leads a production, like working at a very high level. And she said something to me about having memories when she was still dancing of being on stage and seeing the dust particles in the air floating around on the stage of the theater, like
wow.
that level of presence. And I have goosebumps right now, because that's like professional athletes when they say, yeah, time slows down. When I'm driving the lane, like you look at guys like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, like you can tell time is standing still for those guys in certain moments. It's like being in a video game, right? Like everything else is still but them. And I think that's what she was speaking to. Like that level of presence is, I mean, I think in a way it's like, it's the epitome of living, right? Like there's something so enriching and so enlivening about that it's almost, it's not almost, it is intoxicating, I think.
Wow.
If we could all live at or near that level of presence all the time, oh my gosh, the world would be such a better place.
Right.
So intuitively, we know, as sentient beings, intuitively we know that is like, that's the stuff. That is the right place to be at all times. If we could be, we can't, because we're human and we're still growing and learning and evolving. But like, we know intuitively, right? We know that is the truth. That is the stuff.
That's, gosh, I don't even want to say it, but we could end the show right here. I mean, it's just so powerful that, and I want to continue, but I mean, it was just, that is, yeah, it's so beautiful, Ryan. It really, really, truly was beautiful. It is kind of that yearning of life, that growth, that, that upward, it's just very, very beautiful. Very powerful. I know that people are going to want to watch this again and again and again, just to really hear and understand what you're saying. We're going to do this. We're going to take that break. You have that other question, hopefully still in your mind. You know what it was about the acting and how you act. And one of the things that I would venture to say before we take the break for the trip, and you can come back and address this too, is that the actors who stay in the game, most of them that I know, the top really 1% that everybody knows, kind of thing, all the way down to the bottom of the 2% that make a living at it, kind of, right? Almost always have coaches and or mentors, or continue to craft. They don't just go, okay, I've made it and now I'm done and I can coast. They have that kind of upward quest to be the best, personal best that they can be, like a Kobe Bryant or like a Michael Jordan, but in their careers. And I'm sure there are exceptions, but we'll come back. We'll talk about that quest, that kind of commitment that you just described so beautifully. We're going to take a break for the Los Angeles Tribune. It's going to be about 30 or 40 seconds, but we're so glad that the Los Angeles Tribune makes this platform available for us in order to have a show, to be able to talk to Ryan and others. And so by the way, before we do the break, Kimmy Robertson, our friend Kimmy Robertson from Twin Peaks, is a former ballerina and calls herself a dancer with the appropriate dance O in it. And she tells a story in the show that we did together, I believe, but she happily tells the story of her first movie role where they're sitting in a van late at night and she's on a bucket, it's very cold, for California kind of thing. And somebody said, "Why are you smiling?" She says, "What, are you kidding me?" She said, "I'm making a movie. I'm getting paid $3,000 a week, and my feet aren't bleeding, and I get to do what I love." And she's like, she just lists this whole thing about how wonderful it was to transition. So Kimmy the dancer has now been mentioned in our show together. We had a meal together last time we were together.
Yeah, you and Kimmy did.
Kimmy, and then you showed up, and Jay was there, and
yeah.
So let's take that break, and we'll be right back with Ryan Carnes. If you have questions or comments, please ask and leave, and we'll talk more about your career now and get into that while we have you here.
Okay, sounds good.
Welcome to the Los Angeles Tribune page. Here you will find original news programming, exclusive digital events, and shows that are directly from the community. At the Los Angeles Tribune, we believe in giving a voice to the voiceless. We are proud to be the only national brand to empower everyday people to make a difference. Since 1886, our reputation has been built on truth and responsibility. Thank you for watching and making a difference.
For general inquiries, contact today. Thank you on behalf of the Los Angeles Tribune team.
And we're back. Welcome back. And awesome, all was good. So I do want to ask, I want you to answer the question, about the acting, but I also want to say, in the brief intro bio that I read, I mentioned a number of roles, and maybe you have a favorite among those, or maybe it wasn't, when I listed, but we'll come back and talk about some of your favorite roles or characters and things that you've done. There's some music that you do and your writing and different things. I'd like to get to that. We've got, a little bit of time left. We're going to go long today, and I'm really happy that we can do that.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. So, the question was about your acting and how you study acting or learn acting.
Yeah. So, how did I develop my skill? I think was part of the question. So
yeah, it's how did you develop your acting skill, and is it something you practice?
Got it. So I went to class. That's the short version of the answer. I did not go to a conservatory. I didn't go to some professional school or anything like that. But I went to class. I got in class in Los Angeles when I moved out there, and I stayed in class. The only reason that I didn't go to class ever was because I was on a job. Or, if I was on a job in LA and I had a day off, I'd still go to class. If I was on a job out of town, obviously I wouldn't go to class. But I think that's important. And, look, different things work for different people. But I knew when I was younger, when I was starting out, I knew a lot of actors who would blow off class. I knew a lot of actors who, once they started working, they thought they didn't need to go to class anymore. And hey, maybe some people don't. I've always just been a believer in being a student. I think it was Doris Roberts. I think it was Doris, because at one point my acting teacher had been in class with her formerly in the past. Doris Roberts was going to class when she was like 90 years old. I mean, she was like, well, I don't know everything. I'm still going to learn. And I think it's kind of like beginner's mind, right? I think that's really important. And again, not for everyone, but that's something for me that I can look back. This is interesting. I can look back over the years and see a pattern. And I don't know what this is, but I can see the pattern that every time I would get to a point with a certain teacher where I would go, okay, I think I've gotten what I came here to get. And now I think I need to go study with another teacher to develop another color for my palette. And I would start studying with another teacher, boom, I would book a job right away. Or I would book multiple jobs. And I don't know what that is, but I've noticed it. It's been a pattern. And so I think there's something to be said for it. I think it's important to always be learning. And you know, if you're not in class, be studying. Watch movies, watch TV shows, read plays, like study, learn, develop. And what's really interesting about that is there are things that now that when I watch a show or a movie, there are subtleties, there are nuances in someone's performance that I pick up, that I see, that I can learn from, that I didn't pick up 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So sorry, I'm just checking my connection here. You still got me? Am I still with you?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. My screen looked like it was getting a little glitchy, so I just want to make sure. So is it something that I still practice? Yes, I still, even so, if I'm not in a class, I'm actually about to start a new class within the next month. But if I'm not in a class, I still, not all the time, but for certain auditions, I'll work with a coach on the audition for the self-tape, because I just think that having another person's eyes on it is really important, you know. And sometimes if I don't work with a coach on a self-tape and I just do a self-tape with a friend, you know, I always say to my friend, first of all, I work with people that I trust, but I always say to them, tell me what you're seeing, you know, like give me notes, give me feedback. And if I disagree with it, well, I'll probably override it. But a lot of the time when I'm working with friends, it's like they're seeing something that I'm not necessarily seeing. And so I go, oh, wow, that's a good note. So I think it's important to just be open to collaboration at the very least. But at the most, yeah, study, learn, challenge yourself in new and different ways to add new and different colors to your palette.
Well, I think you know, that's very beautiful. I also think what you said about, you know, I'm in a class and I get to a point where I go, okay, I'm going to move on. You know, I've got what I came here for and I'm going to move on. It's kind of like you've been able to assess your readiness or your preparation and go, I'm taking the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe Emerson, or you believe the law of attraction, or you believe any of the science of the mind or New Thought, you know, what you kind of putting it out there that, hey, I've evolved, and then the universe or the business can go, cool, let's hire this guy. You know what I mean? It's this kind of reciprocal thing. I always think when you're ready, when you know that you're ready, as opposed to when you think maybe I'm good enough or not good enough, and they have this stuff. But when you go, I can do this, you know, now let's take it up a notch, then it's kind of like things respond to you because it's the certainty that a person has. And by that, I don't mean that they think they're the best or they're narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's that level of I'm evolving myself, I'm increasing, I'm expanding, I'm able to take on more responsibility and to get more responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great distinction.
So out of all of the roles that I may have mentioned or didn't mention, do you happen to have a favorite that you really are like, I'm so happy I did this. This was wonderful, and it really added to me, or I added to it.
Yeah, I'll give you. I'm gonna say 3 instead of 1.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can just take, you know, all of them, but I mean that's fair game. Yeah.
Yeah. So first I'll go in order. Working with Clint Eastwood was, I mean, you know, that's a career and a life highlight.
Can I ask why? I mean, and I mean that honestly, because a lot of people, you know, I've worked with Clint Eastwood and it was like, it's so cool. But how was it cool? Why was it cool? What was, I mean, apart from being, he's a legend,
Yeah, I mean, well, that's definitely part of it. Is
Yeah.
he's a legend, and I used to watch some of his movies, some of his older movies with my grandfather when I was growing up, and I had a very close relationship with my grandfather, so it was meaningful in that regard. And beyond that, he's just such a gracious man.
Mm.
He's gentle, gracious, kind, calm. He doesn't believe in he let me say it this way, he believes in less is more. And that's something that I struggle with. Like I'm one of those guys who's like, what do you mean we're only doing 5 takes on this setup? Give me 20.
Then you do like 2, or or maybe as many as needed. But
He works fast. I'll tell you a quick story. So there's this one scene that we were filming, and it was like a group of U.S. Marines coming over a hill into a clearing, and we're coming up. We're looking for this last remaining Japanese soldier, and we're not supposed to know where he is, kind of thing. Is he even there? But we know he's lurking about somewhere. So Clint goes. He gathered us all together for the scene. First of all, he started changing lines. And I'm thinking, like, you better not take away my lines, Clint Eastwood. So right, like what a 22-year-old actor, whatever I was at the time, would think, like very like me focused. So he didn't. I still had lines, and he goes, okay, so you're gonna say this, you're gonna say this, you're gonna say this, and then you're gonna say that, and then you're gonna do that. Like he just sort of like kind of improvs the scene. It's on the page, and then he goes, okay, well, go ahead up to the top of the hills, up to the top of the hill, guys. So we get up to the top of the hill, and if I recall, he doesn't call action, he says go. So we're at the top of the hill, and he goes, go. And so we go. We have no idea what we're doing because we haven't blocked the scene. We have no idea what we're doing. But we come down and we do it. We do our rendition of it. And he goes, okay. And he says stop or whatever he says. I don't remember. And it's like, oh, I filmed the rehearsal. And we're like, what? We had no idea. We don't even know what we're doing. But we're not going to argue with Clint Eastwood, right? So then I think we did one more take or maybe 2 more takes after that. And I was like, okay, cool, moving on. And we were just looking at each other like, what just happened? We're done with the scene. So we go to lunch, and his first AD comes up. And this is another thing that I loved about Clint. Everybody on his set is super respectful and kind and appreciative. His wife came up and talked to us. His first AD comes up and talks to us, and he says, how'd you guys like working with Clint? He works in a different way than most directors. And we're like, yeah, no kidding. And he says, he believes that if he does his job in hiring, 90% of his job as a director is done. He loves relying on actors' instincts. He really trusts actors' instincts. And so he shot the rehearsal because, look, think about it. The reality is you guys are in war. You don't know what you're doing. Like, you have a plan, but you don't really know what you're doing. You don't know what's going to happen. So he wanted to capture that. He wanted to capture that uncertainty, that trepidation. And I had so much respect for that, because that's somebody who's really, like, going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, that's somebody who's really in tune with, like, the moment to moment truthfulness of what someone is doing.
Beautiful.
That's one. Second one is The Phantom, because, I got to play a superhero. That may not be on everybody's bucket list. And I didn't even know that it was on my bucket list until I was doing it, and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is really, really fun. And something beyond that, beyond the superficiality of playing a superhero, what was really great about that for me is that even though I didn't get to do all my own stunts, I got to do some of my stunts. And growing up an athlete, I like that. It's fun. I like getting to bring physicality to a role. And I think I think it makes me, honestly, I think it makes me better as an actor, or at least that it used to. Because in fact, my first acting teacher would often have actors in class if they were like having trouble with the lines, or if their delivery was kind of stilted, or they were just in their heads. He'd go, okay, get down on the floor and do push-ups and now say the line. Do jumping jacks and now say the line. There's something about the viscerality of, I don't know if that's a word, but there's something about the bringing physicality to something that has a way of grounding it and bringing more truth to it. And so I think that that's something that's served me well at different points in my career. And then the other thing about that role is that there were just certain things that I was going through in my life at the time. I couldn't even tell you specifically what they were at this point, but there were certain things that I was going through in my life that seemed to fit really nicely with, thematically, there were themes that I could relate to as they pertain to the character. And so I remember when I read that script, I thought, oh my God. I was almost like I felt that it was written for me at that moment in time. And may sound a little bit arrogant. It's not intended to be. It's just, it was uncanny how deeply I related to that character in that script, outside of being a superhero, of course. And that's kind of a funny one, because I almost didn't go to that audition. You know, you hear stories like this. I was really sick. I had like a stomach virus, and I mean, I was really sick, and I almost didn't go. And then I went anyway at the last minute. And it was one of those waiting rooms where it was like, I sat there for an hour and a half, didn't call my name. I called my manager and I said, dude, I'm hurting. I've been sitting here for an hour and a half. I may leave. And he goes, that's a long time. If you need to go, just go. And it was like right after that, they called my name, and I went in and I did the audition, and then I ended up getting a call back. And then when I did the call back, this was before the era of self-tapes. When I did the call back, I remember it was on camera, but it was in a room with like the casting director, maybe a casting assistant. That was it. And I was shooting a film that day. So I'd literally come from set on the beach to go do this. I was sunburned. I went in and I did this audition. Come to find out later, all the producers were sitting in Montreal and New York City watching this live feed. But I had no idea. They were watching, which is good that I didn't. And then, it's like, oh, you're down to the top 3. And there was a conversation with the director, and ultimately I ended up getting it. So I liked that role for all of those things, because, I almost didn't even go on the audition. And then the last one, quickly, is this movie that I shot in Mexico. It was a bilingual production called La Boda de Valentina. And the reason that's one of my favorites is just because it was such a surprise. So many great things happened from that. I just thought I was going to Mexico to shoot a romantic comedy. At the time, I didn't know that I was having the privilege of working with 2 huge Mexican stars. I mean, I learned that before I went to shoot it, but not when I auditioned for it. I didn't know that I was getting the privilege of working with one of the most sought after and well-respected directors in Mexico, Marco Polo Constanz. And, he's a comedy genius of a director. And that resulted in me getting to be on a magazine cover, the cover of Men's Health Mexico, which, I didn't know that was going to happen. Again, it was just like this gift that kept on giving, and it was fun. It was a romantic comedy, which I'd never done before. And there was actually a fair amount of physical comedy in it, which I hadn't gotten to do a lot of. So, and everybody that I worked with was just lovely, just great. I had such a good time in Mexico City. I didn't want to leave when the shoot was over. So it was just all the way around, man. It was just fantastic.
God, how cool. But 3 great stories. And what I love about you, Ryan, is you're just so candid, so upfront, so honest, and with everything you do. And by the way, you get whether that's a word or not, you're a writer. You have the occupation to be able to make up words as you want. So, but no, well, that's really very, very cool, and I really like the way the respect that you have for your craft and for the people that are in your craft and around you, and that make all of it possible. I mean, that's cool. It's just it shows. It radiates from you. It's very, very beautiful.
Thank you, Rex.
Well, I sure appreciate this. I don't want to. I want to respect your time, and we have gone a little bit long, but I do want to respect your time. But I also, if you have anything that you want to say, or anything that anything in terms of closing remarks, I would love to give them to you. Or if there's anything you want to talk about that we didn't talk about, that it's on your heart or anything, I would love to give you that forum. And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, that's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but allow me to put you on the spot.
Allow me to put you right on the spot.
I'll say this, because I'm an actor. I need lines, right? I'm not sure.
Run down that hill. Go.
I think the only thing that I will add is, with respect to music, I'm working.
Oh, yes, let's talk about.
Yeah, I'm working with an artist named Vanessa Soberman. She's based in Brooklyn. I began as her drummer, I think around 3 or 4 years ago, and our relationship has evolved over time. And now we have much more of a musical partnership. I've gotten, again, like I'm very fortunate. She's a music industry veteran and very skilled, not just as a songwriter and an artist, but also as an engineer and a producer. And I'm fortunately getting to co-produce the songs that we're doing now with her. I haven't learned some of the ins and the outs on the engineering side of things. I have a lot to learn there, but yeah, I'm doing some background vocals on some of the songs, and
wow,
getting to help produce the songs. So it's really cool. It's definitely fun for the 5-year-old me who had music as a first love. And we're gonna release a music video and a single probably in November, taking the sound in a different direction than Vanessa has put out there before. And we're going to release a full-length record next year. We're still figuring out how we're going to release it. If we're going to release it under our names, if we're going to release it under a band name, we're working that out right now behind the scenes. So I can't tell people definitively right now where it's going to be and how they'll be able to find it. What I can say is her name is Vanessa Soberman with one N on the end. And we're really excited about the stuff that we're doing. It's really fun. And we're going to put it out there. And I think I'm still learning about the music platforms, but I think ultimately, first of all, if people search her name now on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube, you can find her stuff that's been released previously, some of which I have writing credits on, some of which I don't. Ultimately, I think when we start releasing the next batch of songs starting in November, even if it's under a band name, if you're following me on Instagram, you'll see me talk about it. You'll know what the band name is. Worst case scenario, check out Vanessa Soberman on Spotify and Apple Music, and I'm sure we'll be able to follow the trail and get to what we're doing somehow.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I did say we were going to talk about music. And one of the times that we spoke on the phone, you were like sequestered away in upstate New York or something, writing, and you're because you also write and do other things.
Yeah. So I just got back from New York again, actually, this time in Brooklyn, because I was out there working with Vanessa, finishing up some songs. Yes, in fact, my next call in a little bit here is with my writing mentor to go over the script that I was in upstate New York working on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So full circle, right?
Like full circle.
Yeah, I'm working on finishing up this. It's a thriller. There's some preliminary interest a couple of places about it. And it's not just a thriller. It's something that I think people will be able to relate to, related to social media, and kind of asking some questions about how we interact with social media. So I'm excited about it, man. Look, at the very least, I've written another script, and it's good for me to sharpen my skills as a writer. But we'll see.
Well, as I have a lot of friends who are writers, and one of the things, and this, but for the audience that doesn't, they always say, everybody writes their pet script. They got it and they want it, and they go, here's my script, and they go, okay, yeah, it doesn't work for me. What else do you have? And they go, I don't have anything.
Yep.
And that is an opening that they miss. So keep writing. The idea is just keep writing and have other things.
I just actually shared that with someone not too long ago, related to a different business. But I said, well, one of the things that I've learned is just in observing writer friends of mine who have more experience. One of the things I know is it's like, you get the meeting, you get in the door, and somebody goes, oh yeah, I read this. I like your voice, or I like your whatever, but it's not for us.
Right.
We're not looking for this right now, or any of the many reasons why they might not want to do it. But what else do you have?
Yeah.
And it's really important to be able to say, oh well, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. Not nothing.
Right. Well, they know you're a writer then, at least, that you're devoted, that you've made a commitment to it. You didn't just write one thing, and it's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing yourself with us and for everyone here. Let us know and let me know about, the music and the different things that are coming up, and I'll be sure to push it out wherever I can and whenever I can. So I appreciate you. I thank you for being here. You know who's coming up next week, and it just happened that way, is Jay Menes. It's next Thursday. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I haven't seen Jay since we saw him together out in LA.
And nor have I.
Yeah.
So, very cool. Well, again, thank you for your time, and thank you for your talent, and thanks for sharing yourself with everybody here. And it has been scrolling below your. It's not at the moment, but it can again. Is your Instagram, and it's Ryan Carnes 1.
Ryan Carnes 1. Connect
with Ryan Carnes 1 right there on Instagram. So thank you very much. Hang out for a couple minutes, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
And I'll see you. And thank you, Ryan.
Yeah. Thank you, Rex. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Wonderful. Wow, I sure enjoyed that, and I hope you have, and I hope that you will share out the show. Please do that. I can't reach anyone and everyone, by myself necessarily, but I can if you help. And if you enjoy the show, if you got benefit, if you learned something new, then someone else can learn something new and benefit as well. So please share the show. Leave comments. It's amazing. Even in recorded shows, if you leave comments on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitch or Twitter or Periscope or wherever you see this show, it actually helps a lot, because whenever you engage, it trips the algorithms for all these different platforms to let people know that they're looking. And when people are looking and engaged and they're answering and they're sharing and they're subscribing and they're doing all these things, guess what? Then that platform pushes it out, because, hey, guess what? People like this. So let's get more people engaged. Let's get them, to see it. So it opens the doorway for the platform to push it out to more people. So please help. I really would appreciate that. Again, I thank Ryan Carnes for being here today and sharing so much valuable information, but also himself with us. And with that said, I get to tell you about my book, Life on Your Terms, Create the Life That You Want. And what's important about this is it's actually a blueprint. It's a method. It's a step-by-step guide for how you can overcome difficulty, get unstuck, and start winning and stop losing. Bit by bit, the tub gets filled is one of my favorite phrases. If your sink is leaking, it will ultimately fill up. Well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a book that was so simple, so easy, so tiny in many ways, but so powerful and so profound that by reading the book and applying those tiny little pieces, those little drips, those little drops, those little steps, that you could make major transformation in your life and create the life that you want so that you do live life on your terms. And you order the book from Amazon, take your receipt code or your invoice number, you go back to this website you see below, rexsikes.com/book. I will give you a $497 training called the Mastery Loop, absolutely free as a bonus for going and getting the soft cover or the hardcover book from Amazon. So it's 2 steps. Go get the book, come back to this website. I'll give you the Mastery Loop, which is how you master your thoughts, your feelings, your own self-talk, your behaviors, and your talents in wherever you want, in whatever area that you want, so that you can get better results, so that you can increase your abilities and do the kinds of things you want to continue to live life on your terms. All right. So with that said, go get the book, get the training, and then send me a picture of yourself with the book, as so many people do, and rate and review it on Amazon, which a lot of people are doing. And I really appreciate that. So get the book, get the training, and come in and tune in next week when it will be a friend of Ryan and mine, Jay Menez, and he's a podcast host. He's got a Real Hollywood show that he does. And I can't wait to introduce you to him as well. It's been my pleasure to have Ryan here today. And as I always say, in closing, if you consider something a problem, it's a problem. If you consider it a blessing, it's a blessing. I'll see you next time. Thanks for pushing out the show, and celebrate everything.